So let's start with the first area that we discussed, right? And I think what we are seeing is that AI is fundamentally redefining many of the enterprise applications itself, right? So I think the first thing we want to discuss is, and maybe Mohan, I'll start with you. You lead the Samsung R&D Center. It's a pretty largest R&D center of Samsung outside headquarters, and you've been doing it for almost 3 decades, right? For the first thing I wanted to discuss with you is keeping in mind Samsung's premise of having innovation at the core. And I'm sure you are witnessing a lot of change in terms of the way you design products, the way you look at the entire value chain of production from a AI context. So can you give us one or two top areas which are scaling very fast, fundamentally redefining the way Samsung operates?
Okay, thanks, Siddhanta. Pretty much that AI is core of our innovations at the moment, right? So if you look at the our Galaxy smartphones, right? So we introduced the Galaxy AI, artificial intelligence, in from our S24 onwards, the last year product. So basically, the Galaxy AI is nothing but the kind of assistant for the consumers to utilize the smartphone features. For example, the call assist, where the bunch of AI models comes into picture to do the live call translations. Like where if I'm talking to the guys in Korea, for example, if I'm talking in English, and then it can go as a live call as a Korean to him. And if he is talking to Korea, and then it will come as English to me during the live call conversations. So this is one of the call assist feature, and there are so many summarizations features that are exist in the Galaxy phones, like browser. For example, if you go to the web browser and then see that article, and you don't have much time to read the entire article, probably you can ask the Galaxy AI to summarize it, and then it can give you.
Mm.
And chat assist, like for example, if you wanted to get the reply to be done during the conversation, again Galaxy AI will come and ask you to give the reasonable reply. So these are all very fundamental daily use cases of the consumers. So that's where we have started the Galaxy AI to give the assist features to them.
Interesting.
And secondly, the most of our industry partners as well as the Samsung, right? So heavily AI is getting utilized in the computer vision, the camera. The
Okay.
smartphone without camera, I think, unimaginable, right? So the picture taking experiences or the video capture experiences is complemented with the very fundamental computer vision algorithms with the latest AI as well as the generative AI characteristics has been integrated very nicely, and then providing the better experience for the consumers even in the low light. Even human eye cannot see, but with this particular technologies, we are able to create the wonderful photo experiences to the people.
Excellent. So, Mohan, just on the same vein, I want to ask you, right? These are use cases that we have been almost living and breathing now for for many months now.
Yeah.
However, what people might not appreciate is the kind of change it might have you might have done at the background from an enterprise architecture level, maybe the way you look at data. So, could you give us a maybe a tech view on what needed to be changed at the background to enable all of
So
these things?
we always follow the hybrid AI architecture. So we have the lot of AI models to cater to this particular use cases to realize it, right? So in order to make this say for example large language models or the vision models to run into the on device, we need to do the lot of quantization techniques. We need to compress these models to run it in the on device, because the privacy is very important aspect of the consumer's life, right?
Yeah.
So all these models at this moment, with our own very innovative system algorithms that we developed in Bangalore to ensure that through models to run into the device so that the power and performance is not compromised, right? So this is the one aspect of it.
Okay, very interesting one. Thank you. Arindam, I'll come to you. Arindam, as the country head for State Street and with about 3 decades of experience in the banking sector, I'm sure you have seen multiple changes in these years, right? Is AI the biggest change that has happened in the way you see the bank operating or the bank interacting with its customers? And if so, what are the top areas that you have seen this change really impact your customers or internal operations?
Good question. And whether AI is the most evolutionary thing. So it's the interesting thing is that I've seen through the era when we went to electronic trading, to algo trading, to RPAs, to machine learning and AI. And in many aspects, I think the core logic of what you want to achieve in each of these generations is actually the same. Right? It's the data set behind it, right? To what extent have you been able to analyze as these technologies have evolved is what creates the richness of the output, right? So, so I actually think it's evolutionary, and there may be a next which is going to be there 5 years from now, and I don't think this is the end of it.
Right.
So, when I look at, as I've started understanding AI and looked at the different use cases within the banking industry, there's some, typical patterns which are coming through, right? So one is, and then the most simple one is the way you, and I think Mohan talked about, how you communicate in a non-native language. And just to clarify, we are an institutional bank, so we don't talk to consumers, we are talking to 6,000 other institutions globally, but there is a lot of to and fro which happens with clients internally, etc. And and as a global institution, when you're dealing with 100 markets and 35 countries where you're present, there is a definite qualitative improvement that you can get around communications, which sometimes I feel personally is it's only extends the communication to much more polite and longer forms. But we're seeing a genuine use case over there in terms of helping better understanding of the problem, actually standardizing the problems as well, and how you deal with them. And it's not, a 35 chain email, which causes misunderstandings. The way you communicate with an institution, I think, is one use case. The second one I would say is in this industry in general, and Ram will probably attest to it, we're a high volume industry. Even the core objective is to get everything straight through, right? So you don't really touch things. So many of our processes, that you may be 99.5% straight through, but that 0.5% is millions of transactions, right? And in those millions of transactions, there is you could say a rules-based, historically not necessarily tribal knowledge, some of it is there, which clears 85 to 90% if you have those rules in place. Now, the thing is, these rules, people had it in manuals earlier, then they made into automated scripts, and then into RPA. AI is allowing a lot more analysis, so the extent and the speed and the efficiency that you can get rid of what I call false positives, right, has definitely improved and given a level of productivity improvement which has come through. So this is more about, and I think you can see this across the financial service, whether you're reconciling, whether you're capturing static data, you see this chain, right?
Excellent.
The third place where I've seen is actually in research. Now, if I take State Street's example, and we work and publish research to all our clients on a daily basis. Every day there's like 11, 12 million data points that you're analyzing to produce that market related or foreign exchange related research that you've published, based on which you're taking decisions or the clients are taking decisions. And I think now, and again, if you go back into history, some of this, if the client wanted to do various kinds of second level analysis on that data, it would be, you would come back to us, you'll go back to the client, you'll keep, back and forth and trying to publish a distilled version of what specifically the client wants. But I think what we are now able to do with the richness of the data set is actually you're able to give tools to the client and open up these 11 million data points.
Interesting.
You can address the query yourself.
Let them play with the data and map the data themselves.
Help over
The way
there.
they like.
So actually, in some ways, again, it's the efficiency of the client experience, which is more valuable. You're right. I mean, yes, it saves time, but it's the efficiency and the speed of decision making that really helps, right? And finally, I would say that all of us have got enough internal processes that we do, to whether it's to keep our systems alive or whether we refer to manuals here and there. The most common use case I see nowadays and hear about is this: every company has got this chunks and chunks of HR manuals and call centers behind that. And question is, do you really need all of that? Can you solve for it through AI? And I think I see those internal use cases, including in coding in some areas, in simple things like we all wrote in all our banks thousands and thousands, I'd say tens of thousands of Microsoft Excel scripts, right, which are difficult to control, are a problem. Can you actually convert that into a process? Because all of these are legacy of 10, 15, 20 years back, and then convert that into code, back into the core system. So these are areas where you're seeing some changes.
Nice. Great. I think those are like a broad spectrum of use cases, Arindam, and thank you for sharing that. Ram, I will come to you now, right? So, and as the technology head of FIS and also leading the center in India, and I know that you're pretty hands-on when it comes to technology and also in your current role looking at AI transformation. So you've heard Mohan, you heard Arindam specifically on the banking use cases. Being in financial services, like you just described yourself, where are again the same question, right? Which are, according to you, the top scaled use cases? And also from a tech perspective, where do you think the biggest change in terms of technology plumbing, data structures, data modernization, enterprise layer changing? Where is it changing significantly, or where does it need to change significantly? Ram?
Right. Thank you, Siddhant. I think fascinating discussion. So it's great to hear the cross-cutting use cases that we just heard from both Mohan and Arindam. The thing is, we are a company that's a technology provider to the financial industry. So we get to see the workflows that happen across banking, across payments, and across the capital market side. And the way we've kind of organized ourselves, even from a company strategy perspective, is to look at it in three broad buckets, right? The first one is our own products. How do we look at product excellence and where AI gets infused, both from the products themselves and where can it play a role? Secondly, the people who build the products, how do we drive a lot more efficiency within our development teams in adoption of AI tools to make that happen, right? So that's one part of this. The second is on, how do you reframe the customer experience? And this customer experience can be anything from, our operations teams that work with our customers on various, operational aspects of helping them run their business, to our own data centers where we are hosting for our customers, and so on. And then to a large extent about, how are some of these features that are going to show up for our customers and helping them with some of the challenges that they are having in their, in their own day-to-day, work. The third area is around our commercial excellence. So when I think about from a go-to-market perspective, how do we help these tools with our go-to-market teams, our commercial teams, and how can we make them a lot more productive? So those are the three broad areas. And of course, making people productive is also in the aspect of our corporate services teams, whether it's finance, marketing, and so on, right? With use cases that come through there. Like every other company, I think the early days of Gen AI, I mean, I can say early days because we are only, 2.5 years into what we got exposed from an AI. Of course, machine learning and things like that have been happening from before. I think there was a lot of opening the aperture on potential use cases that came through, etc. And then as we're going through this process, we're also discovering what is scaling and not scaling, and hence how should that inform the way we move forward. So one of the things is about the data management itself, anonymization of the data, tokenization. I mean, a lot of the data management was happening before, but a lot of it is in silos. Most legacy companies will have all kinds of pools of data sitting all over the place. So one of the things we are working on from an architecture perspective is how do you centralize data? How do we bring it into a more consistent data lake on top of which we can build all kinds of interesting models and then can be infused with other aspects of AI like agentic or the vector databases and all that. So, kind of building out a more holistic architecture of how do we think about, when we move forward. The second is around the aspect of the LLMs themselves. I mean, being a regulated industry, is something that we also have to be very careful about in terms of how do we protect the data of our customers, or even if it's anonymized, and then operate it in the LLMs, which are a lot more in a walled garden approach. In terms of within the firewall, we're not going to open this up. We're not going to let stuff leak out into the public domain or into public cloud in a large extent, unless it's it's a very protected environment, even in public cloud. How are we able to do that? The third thing is, as we have learned from the use cases that are scaling, how do we convert these into common archetypes? So instead of doing 5 projects around doing document generation of some sort, is there a way to bring those together into a common archetype, which can satisfy multiple use cases, but uses a very consistent pattern and architecture in the back end in order to service this, right? And also the fact that in most of our industries, there's a lot of silos of unstructured data sitting all over the place. I'll give you one example. In one area, for example, in generating SOWs for our go-to-market teams, right? They need to be able to digest a lot of information that's sitting in email, that's sitting in document, that's sitting in historical information, that they need to bring it together to actually create something that is a lot more effective in a very short period of time. I mean, in some cases, some of these SOW generation, it take weeks before they're able to put it in front of the customer to take a potential opportunity forward. We've been able to reduce by creating a common set of archetypes around document generation, which can pull in information coming from various silos and be able to generate, through natural language processing of information and using a standard query model, the pro, in terms of how we would engage with the generative AI system. Our go-to-market teams are now able to reduce that time down to a few hours, right? To have that, with higher level of quality, a higher level of, information that has been brought together from across all these different, not only the silos, but also historical data that can be brought forward in terms of the customers, past history and things like that. So we've been able to get that a lot more efficient. So that's the other piece that we're looking at is how do we start creating these common methodologies for creating, going after use cases, which are looking very similar. So, document generation in the go-to-market teams and document generation in the marketing side are not very different because they all at an archetype level and ability to connect various data sources, they're not very different. So we are now able to use that as a mechanism to go across various, use cases across various teams and be able to make that a lot more efficient for ourselves in terms of what we do. So, and then last thing I want to touch upon is even though AI is getting better at what it does, the human element is still, we need to ensure that is, human oversight is still there. I mean, again, part of being a regulated industry, risk management is a very key part of this.
Yeah.
So our primary design principle is always, it still is to keep the human in the loop in terms of what we want to do as we move. So yeah, I mean, so that's kind of, and I hope that gives you a sense for how we are approaching it and how we
So,
are building.
no, this is excellent, Ram, and I was just making some notes, and I had a few parry questions as well. I think what you described as the towards the end was classic retrieval augmented generation, right? So, and you also mentioned vector databases. You mentioned data lakes. A lot of these technologies or ways to put in data. I think many of the traditional companies we have seen struggle in terms of how do you start thinking about it, right? So is this a very fundamentally different way of imagining a database? Like, do you need to invest significantly differently in terms of creating new databases, or is it just a matter of having somebody smart who can then translate it into a different? Can you just give a quick flavor on that, and I'll get Adam also to.
I think it's a combination. I mean, what we discovered over time, and this goes back, this is before even the generative AI discussion started, right? Over time, I mean, we are a 50-year-old company. So, we have databases that are sitting in all kinds of, whether from mainframes to public cloud. So there is a lot of data sprawl that happens in companies. Not all of it you can restructure very easily. So some of this is being smart about it. So what we have done is our future-oriented data lake strategy is to standardize around a set of technologies that will allow us to build a much more consistent pattern for the future. When we do that, we can't just wish away the legacy that sits within our systems. So we have to take a look at, either we have to extract the data, with permission of our customers and bring it into the new data lake, which is what we'll eventually start doing over time. But we are also modernizing our products as we move forward. So it's not that, this is only a data strategy or an AI strategy. We have to also modernize our applications and modernize our, infrastructure in parallel to do this. So while we are doing that, we are also taking a look at, as we modernize our applications, what should be our, database strategy. If we've used X database in the past, do we need to get much more closer and bring the products together under a much more consistent database approach, right? And then, of course, cloud comes into the play. We are a hybrid, we host for our customers on-prem as well. Of course, there's on-prem at the customer side. There's things that we do within our data centers or where we host for our customers. And then we have, starting to move towards public cloud as well in terms of either it's a joint strategy with the customer in terms of how we want to deploy these applications in public cloud. So it's a very, it's a truly a hybrid strategy in terms of what we're doing. So this is going to be a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. And the point that Arindam made is very valid, because a lot of legacy sits in, it's sitting in rules, it's sitting in various processes that the customers have adopted over time, which they can't touch very easily, because a lot of times the people who built these processes are no longer working in those organizations, including ourselves, right? So you have to be a little careful how you bring this forward. We believe AI can help there as well, because it can make sense of legacy systems much better over time. But that's something that is still emerging. We are not yet confident enough to say that, we can throw AI at everything that's out there, and then it'll give us back everything, a consistent view of everything that's out. So we are experimenting with some of that, but that is still work in progress.
Excellent, great, thank you, Ram. Adam, thank you for waiting. But I want to reserve some really platform tech related questions for you, right? So I think Ram has framed it pretty well when he said that you look at the data infrastructure, you have to look at LLMs and the way it works, look at privacy and governance around it, and then create certain apps or archetypes that are usable, right? In your experience, before Altimetric and now working with so many different type of customers, and over the last 1.5 years, helping a lot of these companies re-architect themselves to become AI first. Where do you see, same question, right? Any top use cases you want to talk about? Or maybe just quickly jump into which technology areas are you seeing being the fundamental challenge, and how you have helped some of them?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite use cases Ram mentioned, which is SOW creation. For us as a services firm, it's amazing the amount of time just taking transcriptions of conversations, loading it into a custom GPT with historical statements of work that worked and whatnot. It's unbelievable for internal as well as for clients, RFP writing, etc. I would say, though, more broadly, our clients are across such a different level of maturity. It's really a different approach for each client. So some clients are asking us to come in and prioritize use cases, look at ROI. And so it's much more sort of less hands-on keyboard, much more just conversations with different groups. Other clients are like, we've solved that. We know the right use cases. We know where we want to prioritize. We've even done a lot of experiments. We've even sometimes scaled, but we need help. We need hands on keyboard. We need bodies. We need brains. We need to make sure that we're scaling these solutions. We're not stuck in this sort of experimentation phase. And I would say it's interesting, this call, financial services, no question, of all the industries we work with, and we do a ton of work with life sciences, with pharma, with RCG, financial services is light years ahead, we're seeing. It's very rare we walk into a financial institution or a bank and they're like, help us figure out use cases. Sometimes there's pockets of that, like the mention of HR, fantastic place to play. But when you come to sort of the core call center, wealth management, so much work has already been done. I would say the use cases we're seeing really common across industries and also within financial services, we call it either knowledge GPT or search GPT, depending on the client. Sometimes they call it different things, but it's basically an agentic framework. And we have really tight partnerships with some of the LLM providers, which is really fantastic. So we get early access to some of the models and access to the architects of some of these companies to make sure we're leveraging the latest. But just an example, for Search GPT or Knowledge GPT, what we're seeing more and more is not just leveraging the LLMs, but using either an edit-in or a LangChain or a Flowwise, or OpenAI now has their Agents SDK, which are these basically orchestration frameworks that sit above the LLMs and allow you to have multiple agents all speaking with each other. And even Anthropic has some new sort of protocols around how agents speak to each other, as is Google with A to A. But Search GPT is just, like was said by the crew here, we have all the structured and unstructured data across an organization. For wealth managers, as an example, but it could be any industry, how do they tap into all this data? And the UX is so key. The simpler the interface, where they can just ask questions, and then we're hooking with these agentic frameworks into SharePoint, into Snowflake, into Databricks, into Salesforce, into, sometimes it's funny, sometimes our clients are even, this is for a private equity firm we're working with, they have a ton of notes in Evernote. And Evernote, their API was last updated like 8 years ago. So some of the hard work is just connecting these systems to these agentic frameworks, to the LLMs, to make sure when those questions are asked, it has to be relevant data. If it's not relevant, we see adoption just, it go down so quickly. And I'd say another core use case is very much around like conversational analytics. And we're even seeing, both within life sciences and in financial services, sometimes a mix of sort of classic ML or predictive AI with generative AI. So we're building out a predictive layer, let's say for portfolio optimization, or in life sciences for supply chain optimization. But then clients are saying, hey, I don't want static dashboards, I want insights. So we're building a Gen AI layer on top, where not only is it proactive and it's suggesting insights or activities, but also it's conversational and they can ask questions. So I'd say those are another big trend.
Got it. So Adam, very quickly, right? So what are the areas that you are seeing your customers spend the most time and money on in terms of, the technology stack? Where do they really need a lot of redefinition, new investment, both in terms of, products and maybe even services around it?
Well, there's no question that, we all know this, and it's almost a cliche at this point, but AI is really about the data. And it's very true across industries. So our clients, I would say, when we engage with clients and, it's a statement of work for, X time or X people or X dollars to make sure we're building out a use case or we're getting live, whether it's a search GPT or something for the call center, or it's, the mention of non-human in the loop earlier, certainly organizations are getting more and more comfortable with non-human in the loop. Regulated industries, obviously higher bar, more difficult. So we're still seeing a start with human in the loop, but I would say the data optimization and hooking all these disparate systems. I would say one thing we do recommend, though, some clients are telling us, hey, we want to get all our data into the perfect form for AI. And our general approach is, you want to be building the AI muscle and getting the ROI along the way, kind of in parallel. So what we generally recommend is, let's get the data optimized for the use case. Because otherwise,
all data in one and then start doing. Okay, makes sense. Okay.
exactly, because otherwise it's 12 months later and you're still working on your data. And, clients, especially in financial services, they view this as such a strategic advantage. Their AI team, their ability to build these applications and scale them, they're not looking to us and say, hey, go build something for us, come back in 6 months. That's this amazing AI solution, whether generative or predictive or whatever. They want to build the muscle. They want the talent. They want this as a core differentiator. So the way we work is also different. So if we're helping with data, or we're helping with, governance, or we're helping with training, or we're helping with, agentic frameworks, it's very much a collaboration, a co-creation. So what we're seeing is clients are asking for a lot of time zone overlap, because every day it's our teams with your teams together. What did we try? What failed? Learn quickly, fail fast. Okay, we need to change this. We need to change that. Oh, OpenAI just released a new model yesterday. Again, it changes everything. So like that constant iteration we're seeing is a really sort of powerful motion as well. The idea of us sitting in a black box and coming back months later is totally out the window.
Interesting. Thank you, Adam. So you mentioned you mentioned a good point on talent, right? And that's the segue to my next, and maybe we have time enough only to discuss one more. So Mohan, I think you've been and Samsung R&D has been at the forefront of getting some of the best folks from a talent perspective, training them, getting some of the best innovation from these folks. So when it comes to the whole AI related transformation use cases, re-architecture, talent is a big part of it, right? So where do you see the biggest bottleneck in terms of skills that are needed in AI? And how are you trying to address them? It could be training, it could be with partners, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, Siddhant, actually, from Samsung SRIB point of view, I think we identified this need of, or we captured this trend which is going to happen in, which is we are living in at the moment, right? So what we have done is that we are very good at the traditional technologies like computer vision, wireless communications, Internet of Things, and some kind of services. However, if we have to utilize the AI in each of these technology areas and to come up with the meaningful innovations in each of these areas, we have to change the mindset of the people at the moment, for the people, right? So we put up all our learning and development programs related to the AI. So we had a tied up with one particular company. We collaborated with one company, and with that company, we created an assessment model, basic mathematics assessment models, and some of the machine learning models, etc. And we assessed entire the organization here, and then come up with the certain gaps related to their skills and what are the AI ML skills are required traditionally for both for the predictive as well as the generative models, and then personalized each of the training or development programs for each engineers, and then we started delivering. I mean, putting them into these projects, certain training programs as well as the certain projects.
So what you're saying is you basically created a model to assess, find the gaps,
Yes.
and also have training programs for each. So Mohan, let me push you a little, right? Could you tell me what are the top 2 or 3 areas where you see the biggest gap and where you're pushing the talent to get to?
Especially the neural network understandings as well as the computational algebra models in
So more fundamental, basic, just
very fundamental.
okay.
Because
Interesting.
maybe because we are got into the more of like a software algorithms, new algorithms, but very basic fundamentals required for the machine learning to work.
So what you're saying is because coding is becoming easier, people are maybe not really understanding the basics. So it's important to get to the basics first so that you can at least assess whether the code is...
And coding related things also, I have a very interesting story actually. Like, so what we did is that couple of us sat together and then took the LLM, and then we took the entire Samsung Electronics generated code and made the indexing that code as a data, and then created the training data patterns of this entire code and trained this particular model, and packaged in such a way that, hey, it is our own
Awesome.
Samsung's code generation
So
model.
you basically made a small language model of your own, or a SLM. Instead, you call it Samsung language model.
kind of
Okay,
kind of stuff.
interesting.
And then the way I deployed also is that the many of our developers, they hate to write the automations, test cases, right?
Yeah,
So I told them, hey, why don't you use this model to generate the test cases for the module that you are developing it.
interesting.
People are very happy to generate the test cases. Then
Mm,
slowly they understood the power of this module, and then
mm,
they started asking the code to generate it. It started
interesting.
generating the code, and then the people say they again came back and then saying that, hey, it is not working out. Then I arranged the prompt engineering training to all these people. That,
Okay.
hey, how do you convert your
Correct.
requirement into the prompt engineering?
How do you talk to this SLM?
Yeah, how to talk to this particular model, right? So then the code is getting got generated. So I think today I can say that whatever we are generating, almost 30% of the code is from this particular model itself.
Excellent, excellent.
And
Great.
pretty happy about that progress. And another thing is that now after this episode, so in our design methodology, we have put up the one particular clause that, hey, what kind of prompts that you have to prepare
Uh,
for your low level designs, right? So
Interesting.
that became mandatory for the people to go through it and
So
then
you're closing the
utilize.
loop in terms of documentation as well, right from starting to. Okay, excellent. Great. I think
Correct.
that's an amazing
So
example here.
internal productivity, I'm able to achieve using this particular model. But
Great.
by having this entire episode to go ahead, run it right, so that everybody underwent this skilling program, and then this project also helped me to people to understand the AI model, so that I can use these skills to do the product differentiation in our products, coming up with the model based innovations. So
Great.
that
Great.
that really helped a lot.
Excellent one. So in many of these areas, it could be talent or transformation. Are there areas where you have found it useful to have take the support of technology services providers, or all of this is done completely by yourself? Any areas that you've seen is a good fit?
So, especially for the training related things, to assess that where are the industry skills, because every now and then the models are coming up, the open
Right.
sources are coming up with the new different models. For example, when models are came up, reasoning models are came up. So, to assess the skills required for the each of this one, I am collaborating with some of the training assessment
Okay.
centers, and also we are tied up with the certain training courses like Coursera, and we tailored the AI related trainings for the Samsung requirements.
Okay.
So
Okay, excellent, great. Thank you, Mohan. That is really, really good. Arindam, from in your assessment, looking at the vast number of folks that you have, what are the key talent areas that you see a gap, and how you're trying to address it from an AI perspective? You might want to unmute Arindam.
Thank you. So I think if you really think about it, and we've spoken about it, is that, AI underlying it, you need really strong data science knowledge.
Mm,
If you have to translate that to possibilities for your businesses, you need very strong analytic knowledge. So and you need to bring these three together. And I would argue for a regulated industry like ours, you need to have risk knowledge skills also embedded in, just like you would do in a business process in first, second, and third line. And I think all of us have put strong AI governance as we started, implementing within our organizations. But over time, these need to be scaled up. So I do think if you look at it, we'll have to take, and no one's solved it. People have solved it in bits and they brought it together. And I don't think we've got to the end state. And the industry will evolve toward that, which is that you will have knowledge which is relevant to your clients, right? which is on the back of analytics, which are understood by data scientists and the AI models. So I think we have a big role to play as an industry to bring these elements together through, talent which is coming through various schools, various training programs who are maybe picking up only one of these vectors.
Okay.
And basically, I think it has to broaden horizontally as well as go deeper in terms of how talent is built.
Excellent, excellent. Ram, from your perspective, where are you seeing investment in terms of building talent? Or again, I think the fundamental area I'm looking at is we see companies either trying to just hire talent in certain areas or build talent. Are you also seeing it that way? Like you go to the market to hire something, you build something, and then you have a partner that supplies you certain type of talent. Is that model that clear, or it's a little more?
So I think so it's a good question. I think, look, I mean, in science, in industry like ours, the domain knowledge matters a lot. So we can't afford to lose. It's not just that you can just hire pure technologists and they'll be able to operate, because one, it's a regulated industry. There's a lot of nuances in every aspect of the use cases that you have to talk about, because it's not just about the use case from a technology lens. You have to look at it from a business process lens. You have to look at it from the customer's lens. So our approach is a little, it's not, I think Mohan and everybody else talked about something very similar, right? One is taking existing people, how do we up-level them? So we have brought in various courses which are much more tailored for AI in terms of, one is the breadth. How do you bring broad understanding of what AI technology is, where it's emerging, how people can think about it in their own use cases or their own areas that they're working. So that's one part to this. The second thing we're looking at is, of course, we have to hire new skill sets. I mean, there are gaps. If you want to hire a very top-notch data science people, they may not exist in the organization. So we have to go out to get them who are trained, who are much more familiar with the modern ways of handling data and building models, etc. So we do have that, but it's a smaller band of people, right? It's not the breadth. The third thing which we are doing is creating communities of practice, so that within the communities of practice, I'll give you one example, user experience design. These people are embedded across the organization and with various teams, right? So whether they're working on banking or they're working on payments or working in capital markets in our case, how do we actually bring them together as a practitioners of a certain function, where we can actually start to bring together conversations about how do you apply AI for the areas that you work in, which is not bound by the domain that they're working on, but it becomes much more broad-based. And there's a lot of sharing of ideas. That's just one example, but so we are creating communities of practice at scale across the organization. It breaks silos, but it also brings practitioners of a certain kind together to start to think about this.
Interesting.
So other things would be documentation.
Almost like community learning through each other.
So you're not going to churn the whole organization by moving everybody under one reporting umbrella. But communities of practice creates a less friction way of bringing people together who practice a certain art, if you may. And get them to start thinking about where they could use some of these, tools as they think about it. So there's training, there's communities of practice, and then there's, of course, the very niche set of skills that we need to hire for to bring them in. And then we overlay this with partners. Of course, we work with all the major, consulting partners, both provide technology providers as well as, people like McKinsey and PwC and people like that, who bring in a lot of that, what else is going on in the industry back to us, and we work with them. And in some cases, they work with us specifically on certain projects to get us going, bringing some of their industry expertise with them when they come.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much, Ram. It's very clear how you're looking at it. I think I have time, and Adam, maybe I'll let you have the final word on this. So in terms of, you're very close to the talent and the talent supply and the skills needed to enable your customers on this AI journey, right? In your view, maybe through a lens of across sectors and assimilating it, where do you see the key skill gaps, which maybe is asked from you explicitly or not so explicitly, but where are the key skill gaps? How are you looking to address it?
Yeah, for sure. Hiring machine learning experts and data scientists, it's really hard, right? So expensive, so hard to find. I would say on the agentic Gen AI side, it's easier. But we rarely hire people that have, we've been developing custom GPTs or Gen AI apps or conversational analytics. We're 2 years in, we're experts. We know how to integrate the LLMs with this tool or that tool or SharePoint or whatever. It's very rare. So typically we're doing is we're hiring kind of full stack dev or a lot of Python developers.
Okay.
And we have an AI lab where we basically, it's a combination of sort of, I would say, more generic training like a Coursera, like was mentioned, or training from the model providers. And then combined with, I love what Ram spoke about, the community approach, combined with our leading practitioners, highlighting sort of deeply how you leverage some of these frameworks. But it's very much for us, I would say, more an upskilling just based on available talent in the market than it is pure I wish it was easier from a pure hiring standpoint. And I think the type of skills are also related to use case. So when clients are coming to us, here's just one example, manufacturing firm, but I think it's relevant for all industries. They wanted to focus on cross-sell, upsell. So they wanted to turn their call center agents into salespeople. Obviously, these new tools, they're making those call center agents more effective. They have more time to focus on sales. Obvious use case for Gen AI. So we built a predictive model, and their data was in Snowflake to recommend products. They have a huge amount of products in their portfolio. They've done all these acquisitions. So there it was predictive. We needed ML expertise. We needed Snowflake expertise. They're also a Salesforce customer. So we wanted to make sure that the cross-sell recommendations were in the flow of work, so no swivel chair. So we wanted these results to surface within Salesforce. So we needed Salesforce talent. We needed to understand Agentforce. So I think that also drives, based on technology stack, based on client, sort of the different skills we need to train for, which makes it complicated, of course. But I would say the core is certainly data engineers, Python, full stack, and then training everybody up.
So thank you, each of you, for joining this session. It has been wonderful, and I hope to see each of you in person soon. Thank you so much.